Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and thank you all for joining in. This is Sabita here, and I'm the Senior Director for MedTech Quality Regulatory and Clinical Practice in Indegene. I'm very excited to host this session today along with our esteemed panelists, Dr. David Rutledge and Dr. Han Cho, and it's my pleasure to introduce them to you before we begin our discussions. First, Dr. David Rutledge is a results-oriented consultant for clinical evaluation and investigation, clinical risk management, quality, regulatory. He brings in 25 years of experience, having worked with agencies such as FDA, Anvisa in Brazil, NMPA, China FDA, to name a few. And he has also worked with notified bodies like DECRA, BSI, and TUV. He had previously accepted a 4-year assignment from the United States Department of Health and Human Services to serve as the industry representative on FDA's General Hospital and Personal Use Devices Advisory Committee. He's also certified as a lead auditor for ISO 13485 compliant quality management system and holds certificates for design control, risk management, QAPA, Six Sigma, and whatnot. He's also qualified as a EU person responsible for regulatory compliance, the PRRC, if you will, since March 2021. Dr. David Rutledge was formerly a director with Abbott Healthcare Private Limited in global clinical research and then moved on to global regulatory operations. And currently, he is the president and CEO of Global Strategic Solutions based out of California, US. And over and above such stellar credentials, David is also an author of a book called Mythical Medical, where he has written about how EU medical regulations have, made all the changes. And it's very interesting as to how he has combined the human element in a subject like regulations. And the book has been making waves since it's been released. Welcome, David. Happy to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that book, by the way. It's over my shoulder here, right there.
Yeah, I can see it there.
Can't get my camera right now.
All right. Thank you, David. We also have Dr. Han Cho with us. Han is a senior manager at Abbott Healthcare Private Limited, again, based out of California, US. And she oversees risk management and safety information alignment for many of Abbott's medical device products. Now, prior to joining Abbott, she managed clinical studies and supported regulatory and quality functions in multiple organizations. And in preparation for compliance to EU MDR regulation, Han was a task force leader for clinical evaluation and investigation for the EU MDR compliance program in Philips to conduct impact assessments and strategic planning for 8 business groups spread across 36 business units. She has 20 years of academic rich experience, resulting in high impact publications. Welcome to the panel, Han Cho. Happy to have you here with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me with more boots on the ground experience. So
thank you, Han.
Happy to be here.
Great to have you both on the panel today. Now, to set the context, our discussion today is going to revolve around a QARA survey that Indegene had rolled out in April, May this year to 100 global regulatory and quality professionals in the medtech industry. Now, basically to gauge their perspective on key areas of prioritization with regard to quality and regulatory activities, and also to understand the current trends which are driving these 2 critical functions in med device manufacturing industry. So let's quickly recap on the survey and the outcomes it threw up before we begin our discussion. think that was a quick glimpse, but let's dive deep in. So QARA practices in the medical device industry, right, has evolved significantly over the years. Now, there are some real good insights which are coming out of the survey, where there's increased and renewed focus on QMS processes, leveraging technology to drive efficiency in operations and also to improve supplier quality processes. Now, would you both agree about these top 3 priorities? And what do you think are some of the key changes that you have observed in how companies are managing their QMS processes today compared to how it was a few years ago? Maybe Han, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, if you are able to manage maybe flashing up that slide discussing it, that would be great. But yeah, I did also take some time looking at the slides. It was actually, I agree. I mean, I think these are, I see as, top priorities when I speak to also my colleagues, in and outside the company. I think, though, what I was surprised is, especially driven by EU MDR, I would have maybe expected to see a little bit more priority mentioned around regulation and regulatory changes. Might be because of the little pause in the EU MDR transition requirements. But I think once that's realized, when we see that go up the list, I think those top priorities will only feel more intense. Definitely high intensity in this area. I think the increased rigor of audits, it's going to really create a lot more analysis of information, preparation of documentation with volume and depth. And as you'll find again and again, I think through these surveys, leveraging technology becomes more, I think, critical than ever, because that information processing volume is going to be exponential. And of course, exponential resourcing is not feasible. So it'll be a very challenging time for sure.
Yeah. And it's interesting how you say that, Han, that EU MDR regulations didn't figure in that top 3 priorities. And maybe, like you rightly said, the rigor has gone down because the timelines have got extended. David?
Yeah. First of all, let me just congratulate Indegene for putting that survey together, and hopefully that can be shared, with the participants that are joining today and others who weren't able to join but registered. Sure. Anytime we can get real world data and what's happening in the market, it's all very useful. I found it really valuable. The way you did the survey, you gave them on this particular slide 6, you gave them to rank 1, 2, or 3 with, I don't know, about 8 categories, 9 categories, and your plot was based upon all of those ranks. What I did as a consultant is, knowing my bias was, when people rank things number 1, that's where I focus. When they say this is a high priority for us, because I know there's budget and top priority within the organization for that. So I looked at every one of these slides from that perspective, from and I ranked them according to their top number 1 priority. And in that, they're basically the top 3 were leveraging technology. Well, it was technology, QMS, and supplier quality were the 3 kind of broad categories. But number 1, similar to what you had, was leveraging current technology for agility and for quality in their quality management systems. And then number 2 was to gain approval with new products. And then number 3 was evaluating their employees' skill sets in digital health. And as a consultant, external validity here, I mean, I find that to be absolutely true. There's a huge shift in really easy to use cloud-based quality management systems that gives you flexibility. And then the other thing, there's more of an emphasis in generating approval of new products than spending money on existing products. And that's been our challenge over in Europe, as an example, because of the deadlines and the certificates. But there's higher priority in an organization on new product approvals to generate new revenue. And then the other thing about digital first, I mean, that's one of several things that companies are dealing with in terms of things we didn't deal with a few years ago. Software with apps, software as a medical device, cybersecurity, and those things. We didn't think a lot about that 4 or 5 years ago, and yet I live here in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley in California, and I'm part of a advisor to a investment firm. And last year, as an example, we didn't. I was going to say it was 100%. There may have. That's why I kind of say maybe it was 98%. But all of our funding to projects here in the Bay Area, and there were thousands of projects, dealt with something that had to do with AI, using AI and machine learning in their proposal, in their innovative devices. And so, who would have thought that 5 years ago? But yeah, we've seen that complete switch, here. So I thought it was interesting the way you had it ranked like this, and I can give some external validity on that QMS piece and things like that.
So we'll go a little bit later into the AI piece, because I think that's the buzzword today. But as the survey also revealed, right, supply quality is one of the key priority area for most of the manufacturers. So what are your thoughts on how supply quality has evolved over the years, and how critical is supply quality compliance for manufacturers today? And Han, coming from a med device manufacturing industries, probably you can share some of your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think, over time, I think everyone has experienced just the increasing complexities with the supplier quality management, just from the operational business side to, to obviously making sure we have compliant suppliers. I think, again, where this will really start feeling burdensome is for folks who are getting into that EU MDR transition and finding that even that acceleration over the years needs to be heightened. I think there have been surprises with both the suppliers and the manufacturers on the level of scrutiny on compliance of materials components, new testing standards that they have to comply to, analysis and documentation, to demonstrate conformity. It's much more rigorous, and this is leading to sort of unexpected bottlenecks in their submission plans, product releases, and obviously all these reverberating effects. So I'm glad that this was identified, but again, like the other aspects that folks are identifying, this is, I think, only going to increase in that intensity to deal with the challenges coming in. Sure. And a lot of surprises for a lot of companies, I think.
Okay. Yeah. So now when it comes to KPIs, right, I think as the survey threw up, when it comes to the KPIs to measure quality and regulatory processes, we saw that about 45% of the respondents said that they struggle with deficiency reports, they struggle with customer complaints and CAPA-related KPIs. Now, based on my experience having worked in med device manufacturing industry before I joined Indegene, I would tend to agree that most of the time med device manufacturers are indeed grappling with closing complaints on time, and they struggle with implementing a strong and effective CAPA process. So in your viewpoint, what do you think are the challenges in these areas, and how can manufacturers get green on these KPIs? David, you want to go first on that?
Yeah, I'll go first on this. And it's KPIs. First of all, KPIs are important, and from the mindset of, and they're not only, they're metrics on the one hand, but you have lots of metrics you measure along the way. But KPIs are sort of a little different. You want to kind of change behaviors within the business when you use KPIs and identify those to sort of drive a principle within the organization. And your senior leaders look at those a lot more than the standard, metrics that will follow for lots of different stuff. So what I've seen as a global consultant for the last 5 years is a big emphasis on time for certification, basically, whether it's with the agency, FDA, or EU MDR. FDA is a little bit more established, especially with their 510K process. They've got timelines that they'll follow, which is most of our applications over there. But the PMAs will take longer, cost a whole lot more, and things. But in Europe, this is a big deal because we weren't used to being forced to get things in and be limited, let's say, with 3 rounds of responses back and forth. And so that all those delays cost money, and senior leaders know that. And so I would say KPIs around time for certification, number of deficiencies is a good one too. And I'll comment a little bit about what I see FDA doing and notified bodies doing on that, but that's a good metric to look at because it does lend to the quality of the submission that's going on. And then the number of complaints, and then investigating them, opening up CAPAs, and then closing the CAPAs. Some of these just linger for years, and that should not occur during that effectiveness check kind of thing. So those are good. Sort of there are many others, but those are good. On-time submissions was the fourth one that I had. I want to make sure I mentioned that because we have this huge schedule, and submissions bring in revenue, but there's 10 other things we're doing it too along the way to try to add value to the company. But though that submission stay on schedule and staying on that and getting all the cross-functional groups involved is hugely important. Now, from an FDA's standpoint, FDA's really helping manufacturers, I think, with trying to get through the process of submission with a limited number of deficiencies. And so starting October of this year, our company participated in a pilot program called the eStar program, but it was like an interactive PDF filing, basically. Starting October 1st, it's required. So that portion of the submission helps with that idea of, are you making sure you're attaching the right standards along the way? If you said it was sterile, what's your process around this? What are the standards you're following? And on and on and on. And it keeps you from doing making mistakes or omitting things. So you don't get this. So when you submit this eStar, it does an internal check, sort of like TurboTax, and it won't let you, close it out until everything it looks good from a quality check perspective. Now you'll always get questions on the data. So those questions are still out there, but the questions back and forth to where's this standard? Did you follow this? Where's this report or whatever? That's all taken care of. So you're decreasing the number of deficiencies using that technology. I applaud that. It's going to be required for PMAs after the first of the year. I don't know if that's first quarter or not, but that'll be good for our PMA submissions. Now, from the notified body perspective, which is the second largest, revenue generator for companies in the world, with U.S. being number one, there's a lot of the notified bodies are putting together these best practices worksheets and checklists for you to look at your submission to bypass that. Do you have everything in the submission that should be in the submission? So that's been very helpful. And so notified bodies have stepped up also and helped manufacturers to make sure they've got a complete submission. And then, like I said, you'll always get questions about the data, but at least you decrease that, 1 month, 2 month back and forth with a notified body to get the package together before they submit it,
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I have to say. So.
Yeah. So I think, David, you touched upon the on-time submissions and the deficiency reports, and I think you gave some good insights on how we can improve on that. But coming from a manufacturing standpoint, Han, what's your thought on how do we ensure we go green on complaints in CAPA? That's always the pet peeve, right? And if you look at all your 483s, FDA 483 reports, there's always one non-conformance on either your CAPA process. And of course, there are many on complaints not being closed in time. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely the EU transition, the MDR transition has been a big driver, I think, in increasing, CAPAs, changing our KPIs, for example, submission to approval. Now it's going to be longer, right? And so it's not going to be, make it 3 months or less. Management really understanding this requires, a year, and then having the appropriate metrics to, I think, have the folks understand and be able to appropriately respond to all the increased scrutiny. And where we do get that additional scrutiny is often during these reviews with deficiencies that I think folks in the past are not really familiar with from the EU submissions. It's like, 7, 8 years ago versus now is completely different. For folks, many of the folks here, probably this is not foreign. Those deficiencies often sometimes are expected by notified body explicitly to be closed with, dealt with a CAPA. I think these then, if we don't close them properly, we again delay those reviews further and has a huge impact on businesses. I think CAPA processes themselves need CAPAs where we need to make it much more leaner, where things have gotten very bureaucratic. We just don't have time for that anymore. Really focusing back on the problem correction, really bracketing the scope of the corrections narrowly, and moving forward is, I think, going to be some key ways actually to get our product to market as efficiently as possible. But yeah, it's sort of a maybe not so direct way that the companies can really facilitate that review, submission, and approval.
Yeah, but I think, Khan, I liked your thought on having a CAPA to improve your CAPA process.
Yeah, you've probably seen, right? Especially the more mature the companies get, you get really mired in that bureaucracy. And so it's a really good time right now, not just as a general lean practice to review your CAPA process, but I think there's really an impact for getting that approval and getting your product to market.
Yeah, and I know I wasn't supposed to comment on this one. I'll make a brief comment real quickly about the effectiveness check at the very end. We've seen, as a consultant, I've seen a lot of variety around coming up with an effectiveness check plan and having it completed in a timely manner. Some of these have gone on for years, So that last piece of closing it out with that effectiveness check is another challenge that I'm seeing.
Absolutely. All right, now shifting gears. Now it's quite intriguing that 76% of the respondents have stated that they saw their QARA budgets grow this year. And among them, 56% of respondents also claimed that they actually managed to boost their budgets by 10%. Now, this is kind of, it's an interesting insight that's come from the survey. One hand, you feel good that it certainly indicates the importance of renewed focus on quality and regulatory function. So, Han, what's your perspective on how these budget increments can influence, let's say, strategies around both talent management and technology adoption? And also, when you delve into the specifics of QARA practices, do you really foresee any particular area or initiatives where there may be constraints even despite having an increased budget in place?
Well, first of all, I guess that was very surprising to me that budgets have increased in this area. I think David and I were very surprised. Pleasantly, that's great. I think at least the circles I run with haven't seen that. So whoever's got an increased budget, I'm very interested to know. Now, with all the joking aside, I think generally, over the years, that looking for the slashing opportunities with regulatory and quality, that's less, right? We're not the first places where they look for now cutting anymore. So I think relatively speaking, for sure, I think there's been much more focus on and manufacturers responding, in fact, to the regulatory and quality demands now being expected by regulators. So that's really great. I think for devices, what I've noticed is the surprising area, not just increasing headcount or even bringing technology for quality functions, regulatory function, is the need for more medical knowledge and scientific thinking, and where I've seen actually maybe is not reflected, but I see it maybe indirectly reflected with RAQA function is also like medical affairs, for example, who are not just really focusing on KOL development or developments in the state of the art in medicine, but really actually coming in to support a lot of the quality regulatory functions because of the regulatory pressures to really be able to address our risk management system in terms of meaningful health outcomes. Maybe indirectly, those functions are supporting also QA and RA functions. But in general, for sure, I think the days of really trying to shrink the RA QA function as small as possible, I think that's over, right? Is that right, David?
I hope so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We sincerely hope so. Yes.
Yeah.
David, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this is where I got there. This is where I got that bruise in the back of my head because I fell out of my chair when I read slide 10 here, because I'm not seeing that at all, and I really spent time to try to understand the answers that were coming. So one of the insights that I had, and may not be right, but budgets have actually been slowly decreasing from 2020, 21, and 22. That's what I've seen in my business, that the manufacturers' budgets have been slowly decreasing, layoffs, shifting things. So when they say we've increased our budget, 5% and whatever, 10% or whatever, a lot of times the increases can come from, just from cost of living, just to stay even. You have to do that, as an example. But then when you take that in consideration, these numbers are a lot less than what's being reported. But I have not seen that, and so I don't know what that really means. It doesn't mean we've increased from last year, but that's been the third year of like 3 going down or whatever. The other thing I would say is take a closer look at the budgets and see if the budgets, these are overall budgets, but what's going on with their operational expenses, what's going on with their personnel, with the ones they've laid off previously, and that kind of thing, and then also, what's that budget look like from a licensing standpoint? Because what I'm seeing is a big challenge for manufacturers, and I don't deal with the enterprise companies, so like Abbott and Medtronic and others. I don't deal with them as much at all, actually. So what I'm seeing is that companies will listen to enterprise or to software solutions or licensing agreements to be able to help make their jobs easier, but it's still a struggle because everyone is overworked. They're usually understaffed more today than they have been in the past, and they're really looking at trying to use technologies to help make their jobs easier. And so I take a little bit closer look at what does that mean. You may have increased your budget, but I'm trying to find out what about the budget associated with licensing agreements. What's that budget look like? As an example, I know that. When I deal with companies, many of them say, "Oh, we don't have that software program anymore because we had to find ways to decrease our budget, and that went, kind of thing." So that's a real world kind of maybe lens to maybe understanding this data, but I'm not seeing it at face value the way it's being presented here. So it's kind of tricky to understand that. So I just mentioned about the workload has increased. So even though there's been increases in budgets in these last 3 to now 4 years, the budget issues over the last 3 or 4 years have been really challenging. I look at this saying that they've been increased. I know that people that are doing the work are really more stressed today, more stressed, and there's more work to do with less people. And that's what I'm seeing from a global standpoint, all over the world, dealing with manufacturers and stuff. So interesting slide. I wish I hadn't seen it because I bumped my head when I fell out of my chair.
Yeah. So I guess it was how they perceived the question and they responded to it. But it's interesting, and it gives us hope, right? That
I hope so.
Focus
hope we can. Hope the headwinds have turned a little bit, and we can actually some good budgets. Yeah.
All right. Now, Most of the respondents who took the survey also alluded to traceability, information silos, and regulatory changes to some of the key challenges that they are facing when trying to meet their quality and regulatory goals. Right, Han, you work on risk processes day in and day out, and it is a very critical process, right, where traceability always poses a big challenge. So would like to hear your perspective on how do you manage challenges related to both traceability and siloed information when it comes to risk management?
Yeah, I think risk management, inherently is supposed to be really taking a lot of information and making effective changes, impacting new product development from that, or I think even though it really inherently, I think, needs to be very cross-functional, historically it's been really siloed, right? You have your risk management report and an FMEA, and gets filed away. And those days with your hard copies in a binder and gets put away. That's rapidly changing. The expectation is that risk management activities really an ongoing process with regular updates to your documentation throughout the entire lifetime of the device, using clinical information, for example, coming in from literature, complaints, et cetera. It's a lot of information to handle for functions that have evolved on their own, building these FMEs without looking at clinical literature in the past, really looking at the outputs of their work, feeding back into their work in the past. It's a real challenge. And, we can be sure that just as even at that surface level, for example, notified bodies do the same type of thing with the eStar. They look for just even consistency of information across documentation. And those are really challenging because they, again, have been created in silos. One area, for example, through risk management is disclosure of residual risks. And again, often IFUs have been created in some separate silo too, although it should be obviously based on risk management activities, right, and risk analysis. So there have been a lot of disconnects identified by notified bodies. They actually ask for traceability of your IFU information to risk management documentation and the substantiation of your risk analysis with real objective clinical evidence. And it may not need to be only clinical studies, but from clinical experience, but a real clear justification on evidence-based, risk estimation and analysis. And again, it's very hard to break down these silos from clinical functions, medical affairs or regulatory affairs with the IFUs or risk management teams. And I think our team has been able to do is really assemble some key expertise in those respective areas. So we have a lot of MDs, PhDs, people with a lot of clinical knowledge, but also very now knowledgeable about the risk management process. And we've been able to really connect these silos. Those functions continue to do what they do, but we've been shepherding, making sure that they understand the alignment needed between their processes, and have been really effectively. Actually, we utilize workforce from Indegene to do a lot of the grunt work in looking for alignments and the gaps in alignment, and create the robustness in really making sure that our risk analysis is evidence-based. Our risk disclosure is based on thorough risk analysis and evaluation. So, actually through this kind of program, we've also been able to, again, clearly remove contraindication statements that no one knows where they came from, again, using strong clinical evidence justification and risk management standards. And so I think not only these new challenges bring solution or innovative sort of solutions that actually it's not just a regulatory compliance, but real actually business opportunity, and of course a market access, which means also that means more access to treatment and diagnostics for a patient. So it's really actually like, again, one of those times I think it's where the regulation isn't just there to make everybody's lives more difficult, but really can be meaningful to everybody involved. So it's a definite challenge, but even for bigger companies, it can be overcome with innovative solutions.
Right. So Han, thank you for that. I think for those folks who did mention about traceability and siloed information being such a challenge, I think you have given some great nuggets of information or solution as to how to mitigate that. But I know definitely breaking down silos is not going to happen overnight. But I do remember, that some time back in one of my conversations with you, you had mentioned it is impossible to break the silos, but at least let's start integrating the silos, right?
Yeah,
Clinical evaluation, risk management, post-market surveillance risk. How do we bring them all together? So the silos will be there. It's not easy to break them, but at least let's start integrating. And I think that stuck with me. Yeah. Right. So great. Thank you for that, Han. David, any thoughts on this? I mean, because this, I think everybody faces this, right? Traceability.
Yeah. I was just going to say, it seems like the smaller, mid-sized companies are a little bit more able to be a little agile and make connections real quickly. But it starts with also your SOPs and making sure that the people signing off on the SOPs are the functional areas that are involved and impacted by this. That way they know, what their responsibility is, what's expected for them to look at, what they need to do, and who they need to inform back, and then making sure it happens. And the other big thing is this risk evaluation from Europe perspective versus U.S. FDA. We don't. I'll let you say it like this: we don't in Europe. They want these analysis to be right up to date and with your submission. And what happens a lot of times, we have these teams working on different parts of the submission. You mentioned a lot of pieces of it just then, but you got to get a plan, that a risk management file that's signed off for you to be able to reference this and all the other required documents. And so a lot of that comes in at the very end, and there's a scurry of activity that usually happens there. And so that's going to be a challenge for some organizations to get those risk implement the plan and get those reports done, so you can distribute it to the appropriate teams so that they can use it and leverage it in their activities as they get ready for the submission. It comes at the very bottom. There's a lot of activity. It's like a camel. A lot of activity at the beginning, then there's a lull, and a lot of activity at the end with these two hump camels. And that second hump at the end, right before the submission, there's a lot of activity going on. And sometimes people will catch stuff and they'll need to revise the report. And then that has a tremendous amount of effect on the organization. So,
yeah, I mean, I think, the big challenges that these regulatory agencies, especially the big wave with Europe, is they really look at every word now in your IFU. They really look at every line and column in your hazard analysis and want real meaningful numbers associated or connections to one another. And I think that's been a real surprise, or things that haven't been anticipated, when teams make submissions. So those are some things to look up for if for folks who might not have yet dived fully into the European market. But, I think other geographies have been doing this a lot more too, just that smaller markets like Japan, where really everything is evidence-based. So it's not just Europe, it's global, right?
Yeah, but I think like David said, I think the increased scrutiny, and Han, Right, like it's about every word, every single word, right? And be it your IFU or your clinical evaluation or your risk management file, the traceability of risk between all these artifacts and these processes, yeah, I think it is the key, and we just cannot afford to mess up there. Great. So, all right, now coming to the next discussion point, which is the buzzword today, right? All around is about AI and generative AI. And AI and machine learning are indeed poised to revolutionize almost every industry imaginable. So I have a couple of questions here, and maybe I'll post that to David first. Is how do you envision these advancements playing a role in enhancing regulatory compliance within the medical device industry? Number two, how can one strike a balance between the inherent risks which is associated with adopting AI in QARA and the potential rewards it offers in terms of speed, efficiency, and accuracy and process optimization?
Yeah, so I live here in Silicon Valley. We're all about innovation and doing lots of stuff, and so I'm really an early adopter for solutions like this. As an example, and even when we buy, software and things like technologies to be able to help us do our business, we're always looking for that AI component to help us streamline things quicker. So, I would say when I left this large manufacturer 5 years ago, the first week I was away from the company, I ended up signing up for an AI and machine learning workshop here in the Silicon Valley area. It was a great workshop, learned an awful lot. And I was the newbie in there. I don't do programming, and yet we had workshops where we were in front of a terminal programming and all this other stuff. I had no idea what I was doing at the time, and relying on expertise from these engineers all around me, my new best friends, and so even 5 years ago, I saw on the horizon this is going to be an impacting our sector a lot. So I need to get more. I need to get educated more. I've written a couple of on LinkedIn play papers on the AI and machine learning and their effects on medical device. The first one was kind of funny because it was just my personal response to these. I call them my new best friends that are living here in the Bay Area. It's hugely impactful, and even from building regulatory submissions to submitting plans, transferring plans over to a platform that can look to kind of cross-check things from an AI perspective. We want even the numbers that we quote in one of the reports, it's going to be the same all the way through if they're referenced other places. So even a 71.2 needs to be 71.2 all the way through these other documents and not mess up like that, because they'll check this. The other thing, the other thing is we see this big Chat GPT activity, and I have a subscription for that for about 2 years. I use it every day, doing lots of different things, even helping me to rewrite some short, responses to a regulatory agency in a format that can be easier to understand, as an example. So I use it every day. It definitely impacted my work. Every submission that I work on, I use it in some way. So I think it's here to stay. It's a growing area. And even like I said, the software programs that we purchase now, and I've got 34 of them that we have as a business. I've got, 6 or 7 of these that are underlined that we made the decision to purchase because of those AI technologies. And the final thing, I'm being sensitive to the time here, is, AI being used in devices is huge. And so we have a program that helps us in the US, we have 701 devices that use this. In China, there's 59, and in Australia, 18. I've got other countries in there too, but all these geographies are using and approving products, medical devices with AI technology. So I'll be quiet here. Yeah.
That's amazing, David, that 5 years back you got into this, and today it is the most happening thing. So there's one element.
I was the dumbest one in the room. So I was.
Wow. So there's one element is where AI being used in medical devices, right? And to design medical devices, and then the regulations are coming around it. And how do we manage those regulations versus some of the tech tools that we use in our processes, the quality regulatory processes, bringing in AI there. So both these facets, it's kind of interesting. And Ahan, what do you think? What are your insights? And
I think we need to, I mean, if not from the organizational level, but individually, really learn to become literate with AI, just that basic literacy around the technology, because as you said, it's going to be both the tools we use, but also the devices we manufacture. And we need to get, out of doing the manual traceability work and really get educated in this area. And David has had the foresight to educate himself early. I think we need all to now do that. There's no doubt now, right, that we need to do that. Yeah. So we need to individually, I think, start taking that initiative, if not at the organizational level.
Right.
Yeah. So David, I'm just trying to connect the dots. We said there are challenges in traceability, siloed information.
Yeah.
How do you think would these technology and tools, would they be able to help there?
Yeah, you know what, when I thought long and hard about this, and basically, if you get all these systems that are out there and they're not always connected, right? You got to get all this data into the cloud and then use a different platform working with that source data to align things out. And that's the clear solution. The problem is, how much is that going to cost a company to do that? But that's, I don't see another way to with all this processes that are going on that could affect the quality and regulatory environment and the clinical environment, which generates a lot of data. You need to extract all this data and put it in a cloud-based database, for lack of a better term, and then use a platform on top of that to do the extractions and put the reports together and do the checks for the traceability and numbers and things like that across. It's a huge change in mindset doing the business, I think. So,
And in your interactions with various clients and industry experts, so do you see that the trend is definitely, it's changing? Because
I see a slow change. I see a slow change. I think one part of that is I can talk about it, but when they hear it from a regulator, it gets more of attention, gets more hands on deck. So I think they have to get feedback from a regulator or notified body. Makes significant changes. But I'm seeing the talk, that's out there, and there's high-level there's high-level leaders out there that are trying to make this switch now because they see it quickly, but it's not prevalent in our sector in general. Yeah.
Great. So I guess this has been a real interesting discussion. I think the survey did have some points to ponder. And thank you for some great insights there from both of you. Maybe we'll just check if there are some questions on the chat from the audience. Okay.
I saw one question out there. Maybe there's another one out there.
Okay. I think, maybe I'll read this one out. So it says, thanks for the great insights. What observations can you share about nurturing the skills and capabilities of QARA teams for technology advancements? And how does this align with digital transformation trends you've seen? Yeah. So I think just bang on after our discussion. So David, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll start out because I'm just coming off the heels of working with a competent authority outside the United States about this issue. And it was right on with digital health and digital transformation, other things too. But you have to set up a survey and survey your people and your important cross-functional people also, and then and get their baseline, skills and capabilities, and then put in there, what kind of skills and capabilities you need for digital transformation, et cetera, and see who has the skills to be able to do that. And then I have an example of this in my book, by the way. It's free on Kindle on Amazon, 99 cents if you don't have the Kindle free, whatever they call it. There's just really, there's a whole chapter on skills and capabilities to be able to then get all that information into one slide to show the senior management about what you need, because there's definitely a transformation in the capabilities and the skills with almost all companies that I've dealt with. And with this competent authority one, they're having me back, to be able to to do that for the competent authority.
Great. Okay.
Yeah. So you got to find out get data to make data-driven decisions, and then set up a plan from what your data says to either bring in that expertise immediately, or to put plans together to train to get them to have that capability.
Sure. So once again, thank you so much, Dr. David and Dr. Hahn, and thank you for taking time out to be part of this panel discussions, and it's much appreciated. A big thanks to everybody who joined in, and I hope you enjoyed the webinar as much as I enjoyed hosting it. So thank you so much, David. Thanks, Hahn. Thanks, everybody. Good day.
Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.